Flipping houses as a beginner can be scary. We've all been there. This is an example of a deal that I did that had so many twists and turns and in the end ended up totally different than what I was expecting. So let's get going. So my buddy was shopping around this deal to his investors, but nobody could make it work. They said there wasn't quite enough money in it. They just couldn't figure it out. So he brought it to me and I said, yeah, we can do this. The lady was asking $129 for the house and it only needed about $5,000 in work. So I said, yeah, I'll give her $129, but I'm going to give her $10,000 down and $1,000 a month until it's paid off. And if we do the math on that, if I kept this property for 10 years, I would make some good money. So I sent my crew out to the property to check it out and realized that it needed about $58,000 in work, including a new roof, a new road because it was too steep to get up in the wintertime, and a new foundation. As this was a mobile home, they wouldn't lend on it unless it was on a stem wall foundation. And so we were going to have to crane the house up, move it over, build a foundation, move the house back, and set it down. So obviously, the initial offer wouldn't work. So this is the first pivot that we had to make. We had to realize that initial deal wouldn't work because it was misrepresented. It didn't need $5,000 in work, it needed $58,000 in work. So instead of offering her $129,000, we said we could only offer her $75,000 for the house. She hummed and hawed about it and eventually agreed that that was a good offer, and she accepted. So I proceeded to get the property cleaned up, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine that said that they knew somebody that had a house for sale for $40,000. We just needed to move it. And I said, okay, well, it's probably a mobile home. I don't really have anything that I can put a mobile home on right now or that I want to, but I'll take a look at it. So I looked at it and realized that this was a stick-built, two-story house that was very nice and in very good condition. The guy was going to tear it down and build a multi-million-dollar house on this property. He just didn't need this house. He was willing to sell it for $40,000. I said, yes, I'll take this. Let's do this. He's like, well, how are you going to move it? And I was like, well, just call a moving company and they'll come and move it. There's companies out there that's what they do. They move houses. He says, how can they move a house? These guys can not only move a house, but they can put it on a barge, float it down the river, sink it down, go underneath a bridge, and float it down across the lake and unload it and move it to your location. It's all just a matter of money and how much it's going to cost. So I called the moving company. They said it'd be $30,000 to transport this property to my other property, which is only a couple miles away, by the way, which was fortuitous. I thought, you know what? I can get this property for $40,000. I can move it for $30,000. Maybe I can pour a foundation for around $15,000 and do some other repairs for another $15,000. So I'll be total into this property for around $100,000 plus the $75,000 that I've got for the land. So it's $175,000 that'll be into this property, and it'll be worth about $350,000. Score. That was the second pivot that I had to make. But there was one problem. The road was too steep to get this house up to the property and winding. And so there was a small sliver of land that my neighbor owned between the county road and my property. I thought, if I can just get a little easement there, I can bring this property through. It'll be a straight shot, a level shot. It'll be perfect. So I reached out to them. I gave them I phone called. I knocked on their door. I left them letters. I did everything I could to get a hold of this person for 2 or 3 weeks trying to get a hold of them just to get this small little easement. I would have traded them 5 times the amount of land for that. I would have given them $20,000. I would have made it work, whatever it was. But they ended up never returning my calls. I went back to the person with the house and I said, let's go ahead and I'll figure out what to do with this. I'll park it on the side of the road if I have to, but I want to get this house. And he says, you know what? I just tore it down this last week. I couldn't wait. They were building this $1 million house and they needed to get going on construction. So I was super bummed. Now I have to go back to the drawing board. That was the third pivot that I had to make. So I had this mobile home on this property that I could repair, but I actually did the numbers and realized that if I sold it just as land and I parked it out and had a nice road, that the land would go for about $150,000. I would actually make more by selling it as land than I would rehabbing the house, fixing it up, and selling it. That would actually be a smaller profit margin. So I went back and I thought, you know what, I can just sell the mobile home that is on this property right now. And so I did that. I got on Craigslist and I sold the mobile home for $3,000. I said, just move it out of here. Somebody came, they took it, moved it out. I sold the fridge, I sold some appliances, got the place cleaned up. There was actually a truck that came with the property that ended up trading to the people that cleaned up and did the road. So that's what I did. I ended up listing the house after I had redone the road, thinned it out, cleaned it up, and I sold it for $150,000 and made about $40,000 on the transaction. My point in sharing you this video was, as a beginner, a lot of things can happen, but if you buy right, and you can be a little bit flexible and think outside the box, you can still make deals work. Bruce Lee gave some great advice. He said, be like water. If you put water into a cup, it takes the shape of a cup. If you put water into a teacup, it takes the shape of a teacup. The water can flow or the water can crash. Be like water. The same thing can happen in real estate. Unlike Bruce Lee, where he has to react in 1/10 of a second to his opponent's strikes, when we get challenges in real estate, we can respond, but we can take a week to think about it. We can consult our mentors, consult books, consult YouTube on what we should do with this property. And as long as we're flexible, we can think outside the box. Oftentimes there's multiple ways to make money on a real estate transaction. Hope this helped. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next video. And